Chapter 16. The Mistress of All Evil. Dawn thrust open the doors. They rumbled, with light spilling into the dark shed. Caw! Caw! Bursting from the rafters, a raven dive-bombed them with a fluttering of feathers. Watch out! Dawn called, pulling Philip-a out of the way. But suddenly, Samson sprang into protection mode. He woofed and chased the raven away, then returned, panting to their sides, but his hackles remained raised. He was worried about them. Whoa, killer raven alert, Philip-a said. Hanging out with you is all kinds of dangerous. First mazes that attacked you, and now birds. What's next? Told ya, Dawn said. I think the ravens have something to do with the fairy, like they work for her, or know when she's close, or they do her bidding. She trailed off, unsure what it all meant. They're bewitched, Philip-a whispered. What do you mean? Dawn asked. She's a dark fairy, right? Philip-a said. So she probably bewitches the ravens. Some fairies can control all sorts of animals, and even humans sometimes. Wow, Dawn said, impressed. Your fantasy books really taught you a lot, huh? They sure did. Philip-a pulled out her latest library acquisition from her backpack. Book nerds really are the heroes, Dawn said with a smirk. You got that right. Knowledge is power. Come on, we don't have any time to waste, Philip-a said, pulling her into the shed. The more we know, the closer we are in fixing this. Dust danced in the slants of late afternoon light leaking inside the dim space. Wow, look at all this stuff, Philip-a said, taking it all in. Despite Dawn's efforts to clean it, the shed was still jam-packed with piles of junk. Where'd they get all that? Philip-a said, sifting through a heap. She tossed aside an old leather shoe and some moth-eaten dolls. They buy it from estate sales, Dawn said, or abandoned storage lockers, that sort of thing. Most of it hasn't been touched in eons. You can say that again, Philip-a said, crinkling up her nose. What are we looking for? Dawn asked, pulling off her sunglasses and starting on another mound. Philip-a frowned. Not exactly sure, but any clues about the spinning wheel and where it came from, or who took it and hid it, or especially the fairy. They don't put that in your books, Dawn quipped, earning a deserved elbow jab from her friend. They worked their way through the shed, but found nothing helpful or even interesting. Dawn sat down in frustration, wiping the dust from her face with her shirt. It's hopeless, she said, sniffling. There's nothing back here but a bunch of old junk. Woof, woof! Samson barked from deeper in the shed, over by the mirror, the one the fairy had bewitched the other day. Dawn felt a jolt of fear. Hey, boy, what is it? Philip-a called, going to investigate. Oh, look back here! Philip-a called out after getting to Samson. She pushed the mirror aside to reveal that Samson was barking at something hidden behind it. What is it? Dawn said, following them cautiously. She kept her eyes on the mirror, but it only showed their warped reflections. Philip-a stood by a large square covered in a dusty tarp. She slid the tarp off with a swoosh, revealing a medieval tapestry. It depicted images of a spinning wheel. Dawn felt her breath catch in her throat. A beautiful blonde princess was shown pricking her finger on it, while a menacing-looking fairy with glowing yellow eyes cast a sleeping curse on her. This is it. That's the dark fairy, Philip-a said. Woof! Samson barked. If you're Sherlock, Dawn said, patting Samson on the head, then he's Watson. Philip-a searched around by the tapestry. I found an old book. She plopped down by the mirror and slid the ancient-looking book onto her lap. She blew the dust off the leather-bound cover, revealing a title scripted in golden lettering, Little Briar Rose. Philip-a flipped to the first page and read, "In past times there were a king and queen who said every day, 'Oh, if only we had a child.'" Philippa flipped through the book, taking in the old story. Dawn followed along and pointed to the next page. "Look, it's the spinning wheel," she said. Philippa kept reading, then looked up from the book. "It says here the king and queen didn't invite the fairy to their daughter's birthday, so she put an evil curse on the baby." "Wow, that's like what happened to me," Dawn said, sitting back. Her mind went into a tizzy from this new information. "When Leah didn't invite me to her birthday party, the dark fairy said she understood what I was going through." "Exactly," Philippa said, flipping to an illustration on the next page. "Anyway, this fairy is Dark Fae, just like I thought. That's bad." Philippa pointed to the page. The fearful image showed the fairy with 2 horns, a black and purple robe, and a staff crowned with a crystal orb, and she stared out with glowing yellow eyes. "Whoa, that's the fairy I saw," Dawn said. She swallowed hard at the memory of how Maleficent had materialized out of the spinning wheel. "The one I made the deal with. She's actually called the Mistress of All Evil," Philippa said. "Did she cast a sleeping curse?" Dawn asked. But Philippa shook her head as she kept on reading. "No, it's worse than that," Philippa said, skimming ahead quickly. Philippa gasped. It wasn't just a sleeping curse. It was a death curse. In the images, the fairy swirled her hand around the orb on her staff, depicting visions of monsters and a spinning wheel. The last picture showed the princess lying on her deathbed. Philippa read the original curse from the book. "Before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she shall prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die." "Did she kill the princess?" Dawn asked, as Philippa flipped the page. They both read on. Dawn's heart pounded faster with each word. Then Philippa let out a sigh of relief. "No, 3 good fairies protected her," Philippa said. "So the spell was transformed into a sleeping curse that could only be broken by true love's kiss. Eventually, a prince saved her." She pointed to the page she was on. There, a handsome young brown-haired man could be seen mounted on a magnificent white steed. He was brandishing a double-sided broadsword and battling the dark fairy, who had turned herself into a dragon that breathed emerald fire. The next page showed him throwing the sword at the black dragon and piercing it through the heart. The caption under the image read, "Thou sword of truth fly swift and true. Let evil die and good endure." Philippa flipped to the final page of the book. That page showed the prince kissing the sleeping Princess Aurora and finally awakening her, along with the whole castle and town, and they lived happily ever after. Philippa flipped the book shut. "Except the dark fairy didn't perish," Dawn said, knowing that the story didn't end so easily, and now she wants her spinning wheel back. "But what happens if she gets it?" "I'm not sure," Philippa said, tapping the book. "Didn't you say something about her magic being infused into the wheel?" Dawn nodded sharply. "Yeah, that's what she told me." Philippa took that in. Then a worried expression crossed her face. "My best guess is that without the wheel, it's only a sleeping curse. But if Maleficent gets it back..." A cold wind whipped through the doors suddenly, slamming them shut. Philippa lowered her voice. "Then it becomes a death curse." That hit Dawn hard. She felt her breath catch in her throat. "You mean if she gets it back," Dawn said, as the wind howled, "everyone affected by Maleficent's curse won't just sleep forever? They'll die?" Philippa nodded and pointed to the tapestry with the spinning wheel and the princess pricking her finger. "Look, the curse is already spreading to other people. You saw what happened in the corner store? If it gets stronger, then it could spread to the whole town." "Yeah, and it's possible that it won't just stop with our town," Dawn said. "Yup," Philippa said. "It could spread to the rest of the world even." Those words hit Dawn like a dagger to the heart. She thought about her parents back in the city and her friends, Ronnie and Daniela. Now everyone who she loved was in danger, and it was all thanks to her. This time, it was her fault. She had no excuses. Everything they just learned only made their situation seem worse. The fairy was far darker and far more powerful than she'd ever imagined. There's no way we can give the spinning wheel back, Dawn said with a shiver. She glanced at the book with the prince battling the black dragon. Yeah, that would be bad, Philippa said, following her gaze to it. She tucked the old book into her backpack. So what are we going to do? Dawn asked. The sunlight was fading fast, and darkness... Okay, that's creepy. And darkness would be descending soon. The buyer comes tomorrow? Philippa said. Yes, in the afternoon, Dawn confirmed. I heard my aunts talking about it. Right. I'll take the book home and study it closer, Philippa said, hopping to her feet. We'd better get going before night falls. Dark fairies have more power at night, at least according to my books. Do you think the book has information that can help us? Dawn asked, feeling uncertainty surge through her. Like how to break the curse? What good was a book against a dark fairy, especially one called the Mistress of All Evil? Books often have answers to many of life's problems, Philippa said. But then her voice turned darker. But this is a tough situation. All I know is we have to think of something. Dawn nodded. And fast. They biked through town on the way home. It was the end of the day, and folks meandered on the sidewalks, chatting and hanging out. Samson ran after them, barking and wagging his tail. Dawn couldn't stop thinking about the story of Briar Rose and the illustrations in the story. What were she and Philippa going to do? As they came to the one-stop sign, they squealed to a halt. A station wagon screeched to a stop, rode behind them, and also a tractor. Of course a tractor, Dawn thought with a roll of her eyes. Then suddenly, the woman in the car next to her made eye contact with Dawn and dozed off at the wheel. Dawn wasn't wearing her sunglasses. But then, before Dawn could put her sunglasses back on to shield her eyes, the old man on the tractor glanced over at her and suddenly fell asleep. He slumped forward, accidentally shifting into drive. The huge farm vehicle started rolling toward them. The plow attached to the front churned toward Philippa with its razor-sharp blades. "Watch out!" Dawn yelled, while Samson barked. Dawn dropped her sunglasses and pushed Philippa out of the way, just in time. The tractor and its deadly blades barely missed shredding Dawn to ribbons, but it ran over her sunglasses. Crunch, crushing them to smithereens. Then, as Dawn glanced around the town's main block in a panic, all the people on the streets fell asleep on their feet. It was eerie. All these people were snoring in place. But then, they woke up. Well, they didn't wake up exactly, but started shuffling toward Dawn with their eyes closed, like slow-moving zombies. Everyone was swarming toward them with their hands outstretched. What's happening? Philippa gasped, backing away in fear. The old man lunged off the tractor and grabbed Dawn by the shoulders. She could smell the fresh-cut grass wafting off his denim overalls. Dawn tried to pull away, but he held on to her tight with his ironclad grip. His eyes were shut, but his lips moved and he hissed at her. "You poor, simple fools thought you could defeat me," the old man wheezed in a disdainful female voice. "The mistress of all evil?" It was Maleficent's voice coming out of his mouth. Dawn let out a terrified scream.